This is going to make me sound like a hypocrite, but budgeting can be a waste of time. So many people have told me how laborious and tedious and boring it can be to track their money and try to budget. And you're right, is that if you spend way too much time trying to be an amateur accountant, eventually you just get tired of it and you'd rather wing it and just hope the best for your money. But on the other hand, you know that if you're not being careful, you're gonna just spend yourself into another hole. So how do you take something that's so boring and turn it into something extremely valuable? Hey lovebirds, I'm Dan Hinz, and welcome to Adulting with Money, where I help couples unite, not fight over their money, whether you want to crush debt faster, buy a house sooner, or you just want to get on the same page. So tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Maybe you downloaded a budgeting app and used it for a month or two and then never opened it again. Or you started a spreadsheet or downloaded somebody's budget template and started to use it, and it took so many hours to fill it out and get it all together, you pretty much just quit right then and there. I tell all of my clients that come to me for coaching that there's a Goldilocks zone when it comes to budgeting, is that it takes time and it takes energy to put all these numbers together and to do all this work, and there needs to be some sort of payoff. The trouble is that a lot of us spend way too much time and way too much energy, and then there's no payoff, and so we're out of that Goldilocks zone. So the tips that I have for you today are the things that I tell all of my clients to do, and it's the lessons that my wife and I have learned over 8 years of budgeting. The first tip I have is that budgeting should have a purpose. A couple years ago, I was at the dentist, and I lied and said I was flossing, and he could tell that I was lying and hadn't been flossing. And so he warned me that if I don't start flossing, I'm gonna get gum disease. And I thought, okay. And it wasn't until the drive home that I realized, what is gum disease? I didn't know what it was. So I did a quick Google search, Google image search, and I found this. And then I started to floss because now I had a reason. When I saw that image and what gum disease really is, I thought, okay, yeah, I should start flossing. And so now I've been flossing most days. The same goes for budgeting, is that it takes time and it takes energy to put all these numbers together, but there needs to be a purpose. If you're just tracking your money and you're just budgeting just to track your money and just to budget, that's not a lot of payoff for a lot of people. I tell all my clients that when it comes to managing money, you've got to set goals, you've got to track your money, and you've got to budget. So if you're only doing 2 of those 3 items, if you don't have that goal, if you don't have that destination that you're trying to get to, then what's the point? And if you have an answer to that, if you much like Simon Sinek says, start with why, if you have an answer, then you're more likely to stick with budgeting. My second tip is that everything is uncomfortable until it's comfortable. And this is a lesson I've learned over and over again when it comes to CrossFit. It's my favorite way to work out. And if you've ever been around CrossFit, you've probably heard of this thing called double unders. And double unders is essentially just jumping rope, but every time you jump, the rope goes under your feet twice. Now, as kids, we've probably all jumped rope. We understand how to do 1 and 2 and jump and stuff. But when it comes to double unders, that is a skill that it takes time to master. And the first couple months for anyone trying to learn double unders is really frustrating because you can see other people doing it extremely well and you think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this? But in the end, it's just new. It's just uncomfortable, but if you take the time and energy to practice and keep doing it and try it, you will eventually get it. You'll learn the rhythm, you'll have the muscles to do it, you'll have the air capacity to do it. It takes time, but you can do it. So when it comes to budgeting, the same applies, is that yes, it's money, and yes, it's pretty much just addition and subtraction, and so we start to feel bad that we can't do it. Why is this so hard for us? But the answer is, it's just new. That's it. It's just new. You haven't done it before, but the more you do it month after month and week after week, is you'll get used to it. It is always going to be uncomfortable until it's comfortable. So when it comes to your money and you want to keep up with it, you've got to give budgeting at least 3 months. 3 months minimum to give it a good shot and to turn it into a habit that can last a lifetime. My third tip is that it is okay to simplify. Now, like I said before, it's gonna make me sound like a hypocrite, but budgeting can be a waste of time. And what I mean by that is that if you're spending hours and hours and hours trying to keep track of your money, but then nothing happens in your life, nothing new happens, nothing good happens, you're gonna see all that time and energy as being wasted, and you're gonna give up. So when it comes to your budget, it's absolutely okay to simplify. 99% of you have made it way too complicated, and it's a good thing to simplify. So here's a couple ideas that my wife and I have done to simplify our budget that will hopefully give you ideas of what you want to do. One of the first things we did to try to simplify our budget was to simplify food. So we have 4 categories for food. First is that if we buy it at the store and make the food ourselves, it's groceries. Anything outside of that, if we go to a convenience store or if we go to a restaurant, our other 3 categories are fun money for me, because I bought it, fun money for Allison, because she bought it, or date night, where we were enjoying food together. And that's it. That's as complicated as we get when it comes to food. Now, if you have something like DoorDash or Blue Apron or HelloFresh, that's going to be memberships. And that's the next category that we simplified. Rather than trying to track and budget every single membership that we have, and we have a lot. I mean, we've got Netflix and Disney Plus with Hulu, and we've got Amazon Prime, and all that. We have a lot as well. But rather than trying to keep track of that every month, we've lumped it all into one category called memberships, and we have that number that we know, since it's monthly, it's pretty much going to be the same thing every month, and that has helped us simplify our budget. The third category that we simplified was the first lesson we learned, because as a nerd, I went way too far out. We had so many things in our budget because we were using Mint, and they've got all these categories that you can fill in, and we were spending time filling in all those categories and all those numbers that it turned out it wasn't worth it. And so the first thing that we simplified was when it came to toiletries and makeup and cleaning supplies and house supplies, we decided that if we use it in the bathroom or we use it to clean anything inside or outside the house, it just goes into a toiletries cleaning budget. And we guess and estimate how much that is gonna be every month, and a lot of times we're over, sometimes we're under, and it made the time we were spending estimating that number and guessing what our budget was gonna be, and the reward was the same every single month. And the fourth category that we simplified was for our dog, Dolce. She's 14 and a half years old. She's got a lot of medications, her food is expensive, and at some point, rather than trying to guess what her vet bills were gonna be and food and all that other stuff, we just said, okay, just everything that has to do with her is the veterinary budget. That's it. We're not gonna try to guess anything above and beyond that. Now, I know what you're thinking is to say, well, what if we go too far? What if we simplify too much? And that's absolutely possible, because if you think of an atlas, a map of the United States where you only have the interstates, that's great if you're trying to go across the country, because you can get from major city to major city. But if you're trying to get to a tiny little town in Alabama, you're gonna be needing something more detailed. And so it depends on your goals, it depends on what's going on in life, that you're gonna need something more complicated or less complicated. And if you find that you simplify too far and that you need more information to make better decisions, just do the opposite, is to say, okay, how can we make this just a little bit more detailed, a little bit more complicated to help us make decisions in the future. And after you simplify and then make it complicated, eventually you find your own Goldilocks zone and you've got a budget that is exactly where you need it to be. Be sure to check out last week's video where I talk about the financial expert you should listen to. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this video, and thanks for watching. And remember, consistency beats perfection.